Number one objective for my team is know what you do not know, which requires us to work with other departments across our organization to find out what are some of the needs that they have. What are some tools that they might be using that we're not aware of? We need to build that trust, and it begins by knowing what you do not know. How you ask different departments what their processes are, what their tools are, what their practices are an extremely important element to future planning your cybersecurity needs for your organization. That is our top mantra going into the next 2 quarters. You know what they say, people always fear what they do not know. One of the things that I tell my team when it comes to AI is to go back to one of the earliest definitions of it. Before, we used to tell computers what to do. Today we give computers lots and lots and lots of data and get the best possible answer. The idea around demystifying AI is to begin with understanding your data. From a security standpoint, if you're going to feed data into a system, know what you're feeding it. Know what that data comprises. Know what exists from a meta perspective. Know what exists from a singular entity's data. Know what you're feeding into that environment. Once you understand what you're putting into the environment, then you need to have the appropriate human resources on your team to understand how particular algorithms work. There's no two ways to look about this. AI doesn't work if there's no human in the middle. AI needs to work if you've got human talent attached to it. I always look at AI in my teams as another member of our org chart. I see it as a living, breathing organism that collaborates with the rest of our teammates, teaches them new things, but our teammates also teach the AI programs different things in order to deliver the best possible output. I will consistently say this: if you're not investing in the resources to use AI effectively, the tool alone, without the right people and processes, will lead to disaster. One step of a million. There's a pretty long journey that has to be taken over here. The first thing when it comes to ethics and AI and responsible AI is to familiarize yourself with what the policies are that are emerging across the world. Now, often we look at the US, if they sneeze, we catch a cold. The reality is that there are movements in the US, the NIST RMF framework, for example, but there are movements in the EU as well. And there are responsible AI codes that are emerging across Canada, like the Montreal Declaration. First step of a million is to familiarize yourself with those. The second is to understand that in order to do ethical and responsible AI, it's not just a policy game. There are technical procedures that need to be followed. How you validate code, how you test code, how you measure against bias. You need to have processes around this. Just like you have a process to onboard a staff member, you must have a process to onboard a new AI product from a vendor or a new AI product that you've developed in-house. There's a process that has to be followed. You cannot simply plug and play AI solutions. When you look at AI-driven solutions, what they do typically is they future-proof or predict what is coming next, amongst many other things that are done. Depending on which department you locate these AI solutions, they may or may not be useful. From a team that is looking at on time, at that moment, looking at threats or risks that are happening, they're looking at it at one particular point in time. There's another set of individuals that need to be looking at AI or need to be looking at data in terms of what's coming next. If you just throw in AI tools to do prediction and expect everybody to use it effectively, it's not going to work. AI is a specialist tool. Those individuals that are looking at point in time effects on your network, leave them to do what they're doing. Those who are future-proofing, those who are planning the next steps, those who are part of your incident response team, those who are part of the other added measures that you're taking on, they need to be acquainted with these tools. AI does not work the same for everyone, and I say this repeatedly, especially when we're looking at different tools. From a procurement standpoint, AI is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Yeah, there are 3 things that I look for. Trust, trust, and trust again. Now, how do you establish that trust? Not merely from a subjective perspective, from an objective perspective. The first thing that I look for is sandboxing. When I get a product that we were potentially looking at, I like to sandbox it and test it. But test it against what? not the data that they're giving me, the data that I have in our training environments. The first thing to me is that trust and how transparent you are with allowing me to test your product. Number two, I look at their investments in the community. I don't look at investments from a perspective of have they sponsored events. I look at who have they brought to these events, how are they servicing the community, and what are they offering from that perspective. Now, not every vendor can provide free for use tools, but they can certainly provide additional resources that can be made available at no cost, especially when you look at the public sector environments and vulnerable sectors such as the one that I service. So I look at the amount that they give back. The third, which is extremely important to trust, is who's on the team. I look at the diversity that's available over there. I look at the quotient of who's in the teams. Is it homogenous? Have they hired from different perspectives? Have they looked at different abilities, different skills? How do they bring that to the table? That tells you a little bit about the ethic and the trust of the company. Profit by no means dissuades me in any way. You need to make profit, but how you reinvest that in the community and also reap its benefits and are transparent about that is what is very, very important to me. Along all of this, it's extremely, extremely pivotal for my team to remain on top of all government directives and all government suggestions that come our way in terms of who to do business and who not to do business with, which means that from an HR perspective and a finance perspective, we have those channels of communication with the government to ensure that we're not just procuring willy-nilly, but procuring with a strategy in place and procuring with a risk management framework top of mind.